All right, Allie, take us away.
Cool. Well, hi everyone. Welcome to Energy Code Board meeting number 23. We have an exciting public comment meeting today. So we'll just dive right in. Our objectives today, as I mentioned, are to hear public comments and share a little bit about the findings from our equity committee process. And the rest of the time will be for our scheduled speakers to share their public comments. So what that looks like is over here, we've got our usual welcome and approval of meeting minutes. We're going to welcome some new faces to the board. Very excited to have you all. And then I'll go over some quick notes from our equity committee and their recommendations, and leave plenty of time for public comment and our usual wrap up. So first order of business, we will approve the meeting minutes from meeting number 22 that was held way back in December on the 17th. Would any board members like to motion to approve the meeting minutes from meeting number 22?
I'll make the motion to approve.
I'll
Thank you.
second.
Awesome. All those in favor of approving the meeting minutes from meeting 22, please say aye.
Aye.
Great. All those opposed to approving the meeting minutes, please say nay. All right. Meeting minutes from meeting number 22 are approved, and we'll post those on the CEO website shortly. Some quick updates for the board. We'd love to welcome our new members. I'll just have each of you go ahead and unmute in this order on the screen, and share your name, your role on the board. And
Allie, if you don't mind, I'm gonna start the
Oh.
introductions of each and then have each of them say something about themselves.
Perfect. Thanks, Mo.
Great. Sorry I was late and missed the first couple minutes of the meeting. Good to see everybody. It's been a while. Looking forward to part 2 of our work here, and excited to share we have 4 new members from the DOLA side of the board. I know you guys were slogging through a lot of the work, short a few members. We were able to recruit some great folks to take over and finish this out with all of you. Starting with Dan McCauley with the Pikes Peak Regional Building Department. He is filling, and I'm sorry, my order is different from what you got on here, but I'll follow your order. He's filling the vacant position that serves the building operations expert seat. And Dan is the constructions plans examiner with Pikes Peak Regional Building Department, and is also a licensed architect. So we're really happy to have him on board. Dan, would you like to say anything?
Just happy to be here.
Awesome. That's the right attitude, Dan. We're glad to have you. All right, next is John Cattles. John is going to be serving in the Rural County representative seat. He is currently the Gunnison's assistant county manager. John, are you on? Would you like to say something?
I'm here. Yeah. No, thank you, Mo. Yeah, I'm assistant county manager for Gunnison County, and I run basically all of our building projects, including housing projects. So I deal with code quite often and trying to meet budgets and all that stuff. So thank you.
Yeah, excited to have your expertise, John. Next is Brendan. Is it Tarang? Am I saying your last name correctly?
Tarang.
Tarang?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Brendan is the housing developer with the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless. So we do a lot of work with Brendan's organization through our division of housing, and he is serving in the affordable housing representative seat. So specifically the one that's nonprofit for rent housing builder position. So excited to have Brendan as well. Brendan, would you like to share anything?
Yeah, just thanks for having me. I'm honored to be a part of this board and look forward to collaborating with you all.
Awesome, Brendan. And then last, but certainly not least, James McLean. Welcome, James. James is Arapahoe's Building Division's Operations Manager and is also a licensed electrician. So I think that makes 2 licensed electricians on this board. and also actually a member of our technical advisory committee for Division of Housing's modular program. So he serves on that capacity with Tim Pace. So both of these guys are gluttons for punishment. Apparently don't have enough to do in their regular day jobs. But James is filling the licensed mechanical, electrical, or plumbing trade representative position. And of course, that requires that he be a member of a labor organization, which he is. So happy to have you as well, James. Would you like to say anything?
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to be a part of this team and contribute to the success of it. So thank you for the invite.
Awesome. Thanks for being part of the effort here. And that is a wrap for our new members. I think we're now fully staffed again.
Thank
And we
you.
hope to stay that way for the remainder of the process.
That's right. That's right. You guys can't go anywhere, all right? You're committed.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone, and welcome to the new board members. All right, moving quickly on to our equity committee findings. So, as a quick reminder, this work came out of our last session, completing the model electric and solar ready code development process. There was a desire expressed by the board that they wanted a more intentional focus on public engagement and equity. And so this committee came out of that desire, and we were hoping that this would introduce some elements of procedural equity into the Colorado Energy Code Board process. So the committee contained representatives from a variety of backgrounds and professional experiences working in and around equity priority communities, such as communities of color, low-income communities, and rural communities. And there was a significant amount of regional diversity as well, including folks from the Western Slopes, Central Mountains, San Luis Valley, Southwest Durango area, etc. The Equity Committee was convened for 3 times over the course of 6 months. And the recommendations we came out with are summarized here. There are some other recommendations that came out, but they have a slightly different audience. And so we wanted to focus here on recommendations for the board specifically, and as well as the code content specific recommendations. And so the top priority sentiment that came out of our committee's discussions were to encourage the board to continue focusing on those elements of flexibility, simplicity and alignment, and encouraging electrification where possible. There are some other specific code content recommendations, including requiring the installation of heating, ventilation, and air conditioning equipment that are located in unconditioned spaces, or to require that equipment be located within conditioned space. There was some conversation around alignment with the state's building performance standards and other building policies and programs that reference building codes, so that there's an element of alignment and folks aren't having to deal with a lot of different competing thoughts and requirements. And there was a desire for folks to kind of promote or factor in the social cost of carbon and costs associated with health and well-being and other non-energy benefits. So taking a little bit more of a holistic view of the legislative mandate to consider affordability. Carolyn.
Yeah, thanks, Allie. Just a really quick clarification on that first bullet. Is that intended to require installation of the equipment when that equipment is located in an unconditioned space? Is that what that was intended to be?
Yes, this came out of like an anecdote from something that a board committee member shared, that they were doing an energy audit for
Right.
A low-income household, and they found that they were paying a lot of electricity bill because their HVAC equipment, or a lot of utility bills because their HVAC equipment was located in an unconditioned space.
Yeah, and I think it's a little bit of a sentence structure issue. So the recommendation is just to make sure that where that equipment is located in an unconditioned space, it's insulated, as
Yes.
opposed to requiring the equipment be placed in an unconditioned space.
Yes, thank you for that clarification.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. those were the recommendations that we wanted to share with you all. So we're happy to answer any other questions about this. And if not, then we can keep going as well.
I can just jump in and just wanted to say, I think this is something that the board expressed an interest in, and, we appreciate the folks who took the time to make these recommendations and gather and provide their expertise. And so I would just, not necessarily a question, but just very strongly encourage the board to review these. These slides will be available after the fact of our meeting, as all slides are. And just wanted to, if any of you have questions or other thoughts or would like to develop proposals based on these, feel free to reach out to us. But really would appreciate your strong consideration for these recommendations, as folks did take a fair amount of time out of their very busy schedules as well to provide these kinds of recommendations to the board. Go ahead, Ron.
I just want to make sure I'm clear about the process here. So these recommendations, nothing will happen with these unless a board member picks them up and makes a proposal. Is that
correct?
Accurate?
Yeah, this is just essentially like recommendations that these folks working in equity related fields wanted to make to the board, and it is still ultimately upon the board to determine whether or not you want to adopt recommendations directly or adopt proposals based on any of these recommendations.
I guess I'll just say for the record, I think these are good recommendations and warrant us moving forward with further consideration for them.
And certainly, if board members, I would encourage you, obviously, since you're not allowed to speak to each other directly outside of meetings, to collaborate on developing proposals based on these recommendations. If you are interested in making a proposal based on any of these recommendations, then feel free to reach out to us, and we will help coordinate the collaboration from board members on the project management side, so that you all are not being asked to speak to each other offline.
I think I thought Tim's first.
Yeah. Tim, did you want to go ahead?
Oh, yep. Thank you. Good morning, all. Just a clarification on the third bullet, the first bullet under that, where it talks about low-income communities and businesses. If a board member is going to move forward with a proposal like that, would there be some mechanism or clarification for who assesses what that means, based on what jurisdiction in the state? Are there going to be some parameters that you would be comparing that to? And maybe that's not an answer to get today, but just to pose that to the board members, anybody who may be looking to put something together for that one. So I don't expect an answer unless you have maybe a quick overview of what this group brought forward. Thanks.
Ali, I don't know if you have anything specific relating to that particular recommendation. I think what the equity committee was really wanting the board to focus on was recognizing that there are many different costs and financial impacts to low-income communities and businesses from buildings and energy efficiency and emissions and all of those other factors. There are certainly costs and financial impacts that we talk about very frequently and others that we don't talk about as frequently. And I think what this recommendation is that we want the board to account for all of those, the wider range of where those costs and financial impacts come, particularly for low income and disproportionately impacted communities. So I think board members should take that recommendation as you will and make recommendations or proposals that you would like to see that address that concern. So I think that's pretty open-ended.
Good deal. Thank you. That's what I was hoping to hear. Thanks.
Carolyn, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so just building on that, I think as I agree with the sentiment that these are all really important and valuable. I see as they play out a little bit different because they inform different things for sure. I'm interested in revisiting what once we hear the rest of the public comment, the role of insulation in unconditioned space on that very first bullet, which I feel is something that to address it, we would want to make sure that we're appropriately placing something in code. Whereas I see the second bullet more direction to the energy office as thinking about building performance standards and where this code seats within that. Whereas the third bullet, I agree with your what you just described, Adam, and in your conversation with Tim, is to make sure that as we engage in discussions around trade-offs in code and adoption, and we're talking about cost effectiveness, we keep in mind these other impacts and non-energy benefits that are important. So I kind of see each of these intersecting with us a little bit differently. So just want to acknowledge that I think they're all quite valuable, but just thinking about who the recommendations really get directed towards and which ones are specific to the code board and within our power to control. And I think it's predominantly the first one and then how we interpret the third one in our discussions.
I would also make an argument too, Carolyn, that the second one could have some implication depending on, I think one of the arguments is like, how do we measure energy performance in the code versus in a performance standard, and perhaps trying to create as much alignment there. So I think there are also things for the board to consider in that vein. As you all know, we've moved towards a site energy metric, which obviously creates more alignment with performance standards, but there are potentially other ways. And if board members have ideas of how to do that, certainly welcome any proposals in that vein as well. All right, Allie, I don't see anything else. So do we want to move on to public comments?
Yeah, let's do it. All right. So these rules are going to be the same as last cycles. Each registered public commenter will receive up to 5 minutes to speak, discuss with the board, and bring forward any code proposals. Obviously, we'll try to keep to that 5-minute limit. If you're in the middle of a sentence, we'll let you finish, but we will try to cut you off after that. Public commenters will be called on and unmuted in the order with which they registered, so there will be a slide coming up next with all of those names. Once the 5 minutes is up, you'll be asked to wrap up your thought and be muted. And then a quick reminder for the board that you'll only be able to respond to a question or comment if the commenter directs it at the board. So there won't be any other kind of discussion during the meeting. Any questions about the rules there? Yeah, Caroline.
Allie, real quick, I believe we can ask clarifying questions if we didn't understand a comment, correct?
I believe so, Adam.
Yeah, Carolyn, I think that's fine as long as we're trying to keep every commenter to 5 minutes because we have a long list of folks and we want to make sure we get to everybody. But yes, I think if you have clarifying questions other than any comments or questions that the commenter directs at you, the board is mostly in listening mode, except for maybe clarifying questions.
Great, thank you.
Awesome. With that, we've got our list of confirmed speakers here. Just to note that with all of these confirmed speakers, if they use all of their allotted time, we won't have too much time left over for anyone else. So this is likely going to be the list that you'll see. All right. I'll take down the slides in just a sec, but is Ted Leidy present?
He is, and I will promote him now. All right, Ted, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
All right, go ahead. Your 5 minutes starts now.
Thank you. Appreciate the Energy Code Board for all the work that you've put forward to date. I am speaking on behalf of the Colorado Association of Home Builders. We have over 500 builders in our ranks and about 1,700 members statewide. As you probably saw in our written comments, or our overarching comment is that the board adopt the unamended 2024 IECC in Colorado in lieu of this currently proposed draft. Our paramount concern continues to be, and which is one of your charges too, taking into account housing affordability, particularly where initial costs are concerned. As you guys are probably aware, Colorado policymakers must always understand how the rules and regulations may contribute to increasing the cost of housing. Housing affordability and availability has reached a crisis point in Colorado, and the cost of housing often dominates the consideration of other state policymaking bodies. As you may be aware, those local and state policymakers have spent considerable time and adopted many policies in service of reducing the cost of housing for both renters and owners. The Energy Code Board should be considering the code provisions should be considering code provisions that share the goals of those policymakers and complement their work. Housing affordability is determined by whether families and individuals can afford to purchase a home in the first place. If you look at the National Association of Home Builders 2024 annual priced out estimates, that study indicates that for every $1,000 increase in the median price of new homes, an additional 1,442 Colorado households are priced out of the market. And in 2024, it should be noted that 79.4% of Colorado households already could not afford the median priced home. So we need to take cost, be very serious about how we take into account housing affordability. We also have why we're also recommending adoption of unamended 2024 is so that we don't create such a unique code for Colorado. Should Colorado decide to adopt and enforce a code that makes compliance with that code too unique, the state runs the risk of reducing our housing supply and passing an energy code that fails to balance the marginal increase in energy efficiency, the very real and much greater increase in the price of that home. Nearly 80% of our housing is built by national production builders along the Front Range. Should we decide to adopt a code that's too unique, tedious, and complicated, these builders may determine that they would like to allocate their capital into other markets where they're already doing business. I can tell you that if we were to lose even 5 to 10% of those units that those builders produce, it would set Colorado even further back in achieving supply and demand equilibrium. Sorry, I couldn't spit that out, which is absolutely needed to bring down the cost of housing. It would be better, again, to simply adopt the 2024 IECC as is. It creates better consistency and certainty in the construction process and would keep us more competitive with our other neighboring states. And also to note that, local governments are allowed to go beyond this code. This is a floor, not a ceiling. Other potential legal issues federal courts have or are in the process of weighing in on whether similar energy policies amount to federal Energy Policy and Conservation Act violations. We are not permitted as a state to violate federal supremacy, and we believe this draft code, absent considerable changes, could be viewed as such a violation. Again, if we were to adopt the 2024 IECC as is, we do not see that there would be that potential issue. Some supporting data just for the 2024 IECC as is. The U.S. Department of Energy has determined that the 2024 will achieve a 6.6% energy cost savings compared to even the 2021 IECC for residential buildings. The 2024 achieves this incrementally higher energy savings while offering substantially more flexibility and wider range of options for builders to achieve compliance, which is very important. It will help control the construction costs and ultimately the initial price of a home by providing those compliance options. Site versus source energy, several significant amendments in the proposed model low energy and carbon code are based on changing the underlying metric from energy cost to site energy. The consensus committee of the ICC never intended the use of site energy metric as a code compliance tool for penalizing one source of energy versus another. I've got a lot more extensive comments in my written comments that I won't go through right now verbally, but all electric homes, some electrification concerns as well. All electric homes in colder climates such as Colorado cost more to build and more to operate than mixed fuel homes. And we've provided a lot of links and whatnot to home innovation research labs and just some even more localized studies that analyze the costs associated with electrification in Colorado.
Ted, I think that was your 5 minutes.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, it goes quickly, I know.
All right. Well,
thank you so much. And it sounds like there's a lot more to draw on for the board and your written materials.
Yeah, thank you, Ted. We're gonna put you back to participant. Allie, who is next? We have Court Henderson.
Henderson is next, and Sarah Newman is on deck.
Okay, Court, I will promote you. All right, can you hear us, Court?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Morning, everyone. I am Court Henderson. I work for Vantage Homes in Colorado Springs, and we're part of the Colorado Springs Home Builders Association. I just want to speak a little bit to the part about larger homes and Appendix RG. So Appendix RG of the 2024 IECC has been incorporated into the Model Low Energy and Carbon Code, being applied to homes with more than 3,500 square feet of living space located above grade plane. The 2024 IECC required buildings larger than 5,000 square feet of living space above grade plane to achieve an additional 5% of energy efficiency. But this Colorado code uses a much smaller home size threshold of 3,500 square feet and requires an additional 10% of efficiency. Through the process of creating this draft code, we've watched as the board selected that 3,500 square foot number and gave their reasons for doing so. Per the 2024 IECC cost analysis for single-family homes by the National Association of Home Builders Home Innovation Research Lab, which was published in early January, an all-electric house transitioning from the 2018 code to the 2024 will cost an additional $6,800 in Climate Zone 5, which is roughly $3,000 more than it would be to make the same update using a gas furnace. And it would be about, the update from 18 to 24 would be about $10,200 in Climate Zone 6, which is roughly $4,000 more than it would be with gas if we're doing it all electric. To my understanding, the majority of Colorado counties are on 2018 IECC or older, and many do not currently apply the IECC at all. Some of the larger metros are already at 2021, but even an unamended 2024 IECC without any appendices applied will drastically affect much of the state, especially rural areas. I just want to mention that the U.S. Department of Energy has issued determinations on the efficiency gained by each IECC version. Based on the energy cost method, the 2021 code increased efficiency by 8.9% compared to the 18, and then the 24 increased efficiency by 6.1% compared to the 2021. So each version has made big steps and gains, as Ted mentioned earlier. After all that, adding on top of that an additional 10% energy efficiency requirement will really drive up costs further. For this energy code to account for housing affordability in our state, the large home threshold should be limited to a very small segment of homes. We understand that the changes here are being made to promote efficient design and the board's efforts to meet the direction chosen by the state. That said, if Appendix RG is to be applied to larger homes, we strongly advocate against advancing the threshold any further towards homes smaller than 3,500 square feet of living space above grade plane. Doing so will impact a greater number of Colorado homebuyers, negatively affecting affordability. I can't speak from overall statistics. I'm simply familiar with our local market here in Colorado Springs. That said, I work for a local production builder who creates first-time and second-time move-up homes. These are not large custom-level homes. Most of our current homes will be under that 3,500 square foot number, but several will exceed it and have to meet the additional requirements. So that threshold is sitting at the upper end of typical homes and sizes in our market for production homes. From my limited perspective, we are building average size homes for average size families to live in. As it stands with the 3,500 threshold, some of our average size homes will become much more expensive. So we strongly ask that that number does not be lowered anymore. And that's all I have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Court.
And I believe you said Sarah Newman is next.
Sarah Newman is next, and then Marty Poole is on deck.
All right, Sarah, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. Good morning. My name is Sarah Newman with the Responsible Energy Codes Alliance, which is a broad coalition of regional efficiency organizations, product and equipment manufacturers, trade associations, and environmental organizations. I'm here to urge the board to reconsider its decision to add renewable energy lighting, and appliances to the standard reference design of the residential performance path. Adding these measures to the performance path will open the door to substantial efficiency trade-offs and unearned credit that could be used to reduce the long-term efficiency of buildings. Proposals to include these measures in the IECC performance path have been debated at length over various code update cycles and have been rejected every time for these reasons. Awarding trade-off credit for renewable energy is particularly problematic. On-site generation that could have been used to contribute to the grid or to replace non-renewable energy will instead be used to allow code users to increase the actual energy consumed by the proposed building. The fundamental problem with allowing trade-offs between generation and efficiency is that, at best, it allows code users to replace wasted energy with renewable energy, and at worst, it allows code users who would have installed renewable energy anyway, due to federal tax credits, net metering, or other incentives, to reduce efficiency and exacerbate an already strained energy supply. Additionally, we do not believe that adding appliances and lighting to the performance path will drive a meaningful increase in the installation of more efficient lighting or appliances. Setting the standard reference design assumptions at federal minimum efficiency levels ignores the high market penetration of Energy Star products in these categories. Essentially, this decision would award free trade-off credit for products that are often already being purchased and installed. Although a code user can receive a limited amount of credit for these measures under Section R408, these credits are earned in addition to basic prescriptive compliance, whereas including them in the performance path would allow efficiency reductions below the prescriptive baseline, including up to a 15% reduction in envelope efficiency. If the board does decide to move forward with including these measures in the performance path, the code language as it appears in public comment draft number 1 has several technical shortcomings that would need to be addressed. 1, there is no distinction between on-site and off-site renewable energy. 2, there is no apparent requirement that renewable energy actually be used on-site and or that renewable energy credits be retired. 3, the new code language does not clarify how the renewable energy would be modeled or quantified in the performance path. And 4, there is no clarification as to which appliances may be included in the standard reference design. And finally, these new categories of trade-offs conflict with the scope of the performance path established in Section R405.1, which limits the simulated performance analysis to heating, cooling, mechanical ventilation, and surface water heating only. I would invite you to view our written comments for more information, and thank you for your time and consideration this morning.
Thank you, Sarah.
Right. We have Marty next, I believe. All right. Marty, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can.
Great. Good afternoon, Energy Code Board. My name is Marty Poole. I'm the Sustainability Manager for the City of Durango. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this draft code. I'm here to speak about EV charging specifically, and that section of the code. Just want to point out that when a driver makes a shift to being an EV driver, they quickly become familiar with the concept of miles per hour charging, which is the amount of additional range they can add to their vehicle for the amount of time that they are plugged in. And while it may seem like the landscape of EV charging infrastructure is rapidly changing, the fact of the matter is that many aspects of charging speed are constrained by simple physics. A certain amount of kilowatt power being delivered for a certain amount of time will result in a certain amount of kWh being delivered to the vehicle's battery. In turn, that kWh translates to a certain amount of miles that vehicle can drive. This mileage is dictated mostly by the size and aerodynamics of the vehicle and not the battery size, though the battery size does affect overall range from a full charge down to an empty charge. I'm pointing out these basic physical constraints just to highlight the key relationship between EV charging levels, that is the voltage and amperage that an EV charger is listed at, and the amount of time that a vehicle must be plugged in to achieve a certain amount of range. A level 1 charger can provide about 25 to 30 miles of range if plugged in for 8 to 10 hours, which is an excellent use case for overnight residential or during a full workday. A level 2 charger with full EVSE installed equipment can provide about 25 to 30 miles of range if plugged in for 1 hour. While the faster charging may seem better in every case, we must consider that a EVSE level 2 charger can cost about 5 to 10 times as much per space than simply providing a level 1 space, which is an outlet that allows drivers to just use their own portable charging cable. So if we want more spaces for more drivers, and we have use cases where people can be plugged in for longer, we can get more bang for our buck by utilizing level 1 charging. I greatly appreciate the Energy Codes Board inclusion of the flexible level 1 substitution for builders to consider this option in appropriate use cases with much longer dwell times. The last point I would make is around the commercial requirements. I would encourage the Code Board to consider changes to the mercantile and business requirements for commercial buildings. If you think about the use case, most of this parking is utilized by customers which are going to be parked in those parking spots for 30 minutes or less. And so even a level 2 charger, as is currently required, is only going to add about 10 miles, maybe 15 miles of range to your vehicle if you even take the time to decide to plug in. And so the current requirements are asking for a lot of infrastructure that in my mind may go unutilized and may unnecessarily add to the cost of building these buildings and will never actually end up being used by customers. I think rows of unused EV charging stations or unutilized underground infrastructure could be a detriment to EV adoption and be something that critics and cynics point out as a waste of money and improper adoption of EV. So I would just consider looking at dwell times and the type of charging that is being required specifically in those commercial, mercantile, and business case where you're trying to provide charging to customers specifically and how long they will be parked in those spaces. Thank you again for considering these flexible options to make the cost of installed infrastructure be as most cost effective as possible to provide as much EV charging to future Coloradans as possible. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Marty.
Thanks, Marty.
We have Ryan Mears next. And then Ron Bennett is on deck.
All right, Ryan, can you go ahead and speak?
Yep. Can you hear me all right?
We can. Thank you.
Great.
Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Ryan Mears. I'm the program director for ResNet. ResNet is a network representing over 2,500 home energy rating professionals across the U.S., including more than 150 in Colorado. It's apparent that the goal of the proposed amendments is to reduce carbon emissions, but I think that some of the proposed changes appear to be contradictory, and may create a lopsided compliance paths in terms of energy and carbon efficiency. I'll give a couple examples. The R405 performance path allows the full impact of renewable energy, but the ERI path has to meet the targets based on efficiency only. And then the R406 ERI path allows a 5% increase in scores for the use of heat pumps, but the ERI scores have been reduced by 2 points from the 2024 IECC target scores, essentially washing out any loosening of those target score requirements. And then the prescriptive path is basically going to give credit for minimum efficiency heat pumps. which again kind of is not really going to get you any credit on in terms of the ERI target scores. The R405 path, as it relates to changing the reference home from either electric or gas, depending on the rated home, to only having fossil fuels in the performance path. And I spoke with one of our software developers about that. Unfortunately, the functionality doesn't currently exist in ResNet software, so we can't actually model what the impact is going to be of requiring fossil fuels for the reference home. But the general thinking is that it might actually benefit all electric homes when using site energy, but if a jurisdiction chooses to use the energy cost method, it would likely hurt them in terms of compliance with the R405 path. So I would recommend that it be further investigated prior to adopting that change, especially because the state may have to foot the bill for a custom software version that can handle those changes. Basically a custom report for Colorado. Moving on though, one of the biggest weaknesses that there is in the national IECC development process is making changes to all the compliance paths at the same time. Ultimately, this results in unequal levels of efficiency across the different compliance options. A very recent study by the Florida Solar Energy Center compared the 2024 IECC prescriptive compliance path against HERS scores. And the study showed that the ERI target scores in R406 should actually be something like a 57 in climate zones 4 and 5, a 60 in climate zone 6, and a 61 in climate zone 7. I linked to that study in my written comments. The study was based on an all-electric home, which tends to score slightly higher than gas. By setting the ERI target scores lower, more efficient, you're actually disincentivizing all electric homes and driving builders to another compliance option. This is important because in 2024, 57% of all new 1 and 2 family homes built in Colorado received a HERS rating. So more than half of homes, this is almost 12,000 homes just last year received a HERS rating. Of those 12,000 homes, 679 were all electric. So a fairly small percentage of homes being built there are all electric. The average HERS rated home in Colorado that has gas heating and hot water is estimated to emit 8.8 tons of carbon annually, whereas the average all electric home, so electric heating and hot water, is estimated to emit 1.9 tons of CO2 annually. Obviously, a difference of about 7 tons of CO2 per year for electric compared to gas. All 12,000 of those homes that were HERS rated in Colorado last year also received something called a HERS carbon index. That carbon index is required to be included with every home that gets a HERS rating. The gas homes had an average carbon index of 133, and the electric homes had an average carbon index of 48. A higher carbon index, just like the ERI score, a higher carbon index means more carbon emissions the home produces. One effective way that could meet the 3 priority factors that are handed down by the legislature in the statute that authorizes your work, which is to minimize carbon emissions, but also maintain affordability and provide compliance paths for electric and mixed fuel. One way to do that would be to adopt a carbon index requirement. Carbon obviously has energy efficiency and carbon are tied together, and that will really give builders the flexibility in how they design and construct new homes, which ultimately leads to more affordable compliance options. And
I apologize.
Okay.
Your 5 minutes are up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Yep.
Ryan.
We have Ron Bennett up next, and then Christine Brinker requested to be at the end, so we'll skip over her for now, and Daniel Cupid is on deck.
All right, Ron, you have been unmuted. Can you hear us?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, go ahead.
I'm Ron Bennett. I reside in Boulder, and I'm an architect who designs all-electric buildings and energy-efficient homes. I'm also a volunteer with and am speaking on behalf of 350 Colorado and its over 20,000 members statewide. Thank you for your work on the 2024 Low Energy and Carbon Code and this opportunity to address you today. I believe the Homeowners Association and others inflate and exaggerate the cost estimates for building safer, sturdier, healthier, and more efficient, energy-efficient homes. It's in the home builders' financial interest to roll back building codes so they can build as cheaply as possible while still selling for as much as possible. The real cost of new homes aren't determined by the building codes, even those requiring more energy efficiency. They're determined by supply and demand, land costs, labor costs, location, school quality, neighborhood attractiveness, and amenities. Rolling back building energy codes actually makes home affordability worse by increasing the utility bills for the entire lifespan of each new home. I and 350 Colorado are most concerned with the inclusion of energy cost appendices CL and RM, which undermine the intent of the low energy and carbon code. Honestly, I found cost-based analysis an easy way to game the system and avoid compliance. I'll refer you to a letter submitted to the board by RMI, formerly Rocky Mountain Institute, to which 350 and other organizations have signed on. The appendices ignore first cost savings, promote dirty fuels, don't address energy cost volatility, and are not aligned with Colorado's emissions reduction goals. Thank you for the opportunity again, and I appreciate your work on the code.
Thank you, Ron. All right. We have Daniel up next, and Colin Toome is on deck.
Daniel, can you hear us? Daniel, looks like you're muted if you're speaking.
Can you hear me now?
We can, yes, go ahead.
I'm an experienced building envelope consultant and construction industry professional with 44 years of experience on various ends of the construction industry. I'm heavily involved with industry associations on various boards and committees, including our Colorado chapter of the International Code Council. I spent over 300 hours working on Denver's Green Buildings Ordinance. That ordinance resulted in increased construction costs and a large reduction in construction permits in subsequent years. That's even with good measures and simplification added to that ordinance. For many of the same issues relayed by the gentleman representing the HBA, I highly encourage the board to pay acute attention to the recommendations being provided by the construction industry professionals and code officials. This includes adherence to the provisions of the 2024 IECC Model Energy Code, with the inclusion of simple options for energy credits to meet reasonable ERI target score. I would like to reiterate some of the items that were included in a letter from our Colorado chapter of the International Code Council, written by Steve Thomas on January 29th of 2025. Building codes are a cornerstone of safe, healthy, and energy efficient communities. They guide designers, tradespeople, homeowners, and building owners seeking to safely, affordably build and improve their homes and businesses. As such, the ability to clearly articulate, interpret, and enforce those requirements is paramount to successfully implementing updated codes as a code official. After significant discussion with our membership, we write to voice concerns regarding the current draft of the Model Energy and Carbon Code. That speaks to the heart of the key principles. The unenforceability, complexity of these recommendations and amendments, the patent disregard for affordability in the face of housing crisis recognized as the key issue by the governor and state decision makers, and additional stringency created by these measures that violates the statutory mandate of the Colorado Energy Code. We also include some specific code recommendation items that are at issue. I'm going to skip to some of these. There are proposed recommendations that provided by the Energy Code Board consisting of 160 pages add significant complexity to the functions of plan review, inspection, and administration. This is functionally a comprehensive rewrite of the 2024 IECC that creates a level of uniqueness to Colorado's Energy Code that prevents code officials from using the ICC published resources, as well as free and regularly used Department of Energy published software like ComCheck and ResCheck. By losing these industry standard resources and tools, we lose the level of ease and implementation that all but guarantees a difficulty in the compliance of parties involved. I'm going to skip forward to the next section as well. In this year's State of the State address, Governor Polis clearly outlined commitment to affordability as a core component of his policy strategy, recognizing that the dream of home ownership is unjustly out of reach for many Coloradans. This sentiment has been echoed consistently by decision makers throughout the state, representing municipalities, counties alike. However, the recommendations provided by the CECB seem devoid of this imperative. The choice to move energy cost-related analysis to appendices outside the body of the model code demonstrates this disregard. So let us not forget that HB 22-1362, Section 6B, requires consideration of home affordability as part of the code board's process, energy code board's process. On the issue of increased stringency, Colorado statute provides a clear mandate for the Colorado Energy Board stating that this energy code board shall not increase the stringency of requirements of the International Energy Conservation Code, including appendices that adopts this part of the Model Energy Code and Carbon Code language. HB 22-1362, Section 7 mandates has clearly been violated with these recommendations, specifically provisions to move the large home 5,000 square foot threshold down to 3,500 square feet. For additional credit requirement is increasing the stringency for mixed fuel buildings. I'm going to conclude with the final paragraph. We hope that you understand the opinions expressed in this document come from experienced code officials with long-standing tradition of participating in national code development and building codes. Including the ICC, our chapter has helped to guide national code development through a commitment to a principled approach refined through the decades of participation, education, and professional development. We ask that you reconsider these recommendations in your next draft by removing the items adding stringency. Keep energy cost methods in the body of the code, and carefully considering the affordability and realistic enforceability as key principles for all of your recommendations. This comes from Steve Thomas, our chair of our code development committee. I will add that state of Colorado, we have 364 jurisdictions with various building code officials that have to enforce the existing codes with a limited resources as to the availability of personnel to be able to implement and enforce these codes. And highly recommend that this board reconsider the 160 pages of proposed additional code language to simplify things as much as possible. And again, try to adhere to the provisions that are already available in the 2024 IECC model code.
Awesome. Thank you, Daniel. That was your 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And we have Colin Toome up next and Catherine Goff on deck.
All right, Colin, go ahead.
All right, thank you. I'm Colin Toome, Climate and Health Strategist at Boulder County. Coming from a building industry background and also coordinator of a multi-jurisdictional building code collaborative in the North Metro area whose members are striving towards healthy, low emissions buildings through regionally consistent local building policies. We wish to thank the Energy Code Board for their now years of work to date and their deep, robust discussions around every facet of this very thoughtful code. We're very supportive of the direction the low energy and carbon code is going, and we urge you to stay the course and shore up the code's electric preferred and fuel neutral features. Local governments such as my own are faced with multiple challenges to which buildings are a major contributor. We have summer ozone and year-round particulates caused in part by NOx from fuel combustion in buildings, causing our residents to have to monitor when it's healthy to be outside, and indoors are not always a refuge when fuels are being combusted inside. We also live in fear of firestorms and other threats driven by climate change. Our communities are still rebuilding from the Marshall Fire's $2 billion in losses, which are impacting housing and insurance availability. Local governments are first responders to our residents on these issues, and yet we have limited control over the sources of pollution. One of our key tools is to protect life and health safety is building codes, one which in Colorado are locally adopted and amended. This leads to inconsistency among the codes from one city to another and the frustration of property owners and builders. A major reason our building code cohort convened was to better synchronize energy codes across our jurisdictions, and that is now one ambition of the larger collaborative across the whole DRCOG metro planning region. The single biggest refrain from that collaborative is the desire to move towards low emissions codes in coordination while retaining the local control to amend for local conditions. The high performance minimum of the proposed low energy and carbon code makes that job easier for us. The key strength of this code is the way it justly accounts for the much greater efficiency of modern electric space and water heating equipment over fuel combustion, rebalancing a bias in the historic codes. This is crucial to meet not only our health-based emissions goals increasingly within the cleaning up the grid, but also to protect owners and tenants from the volatility inherent to gas prices. To maintain this strength and the fair and rational energy basis for the code, we ask that the energy code-based appendices CL and RM be removed. The cost-based metric is not all it appears to be, since energy costs vary over time, geography, utility rate plan, and does not account for other savings inherent to all electric construction. In short, it doesn't accurately reflect costs. Without an understanding of this nuance, jurisdictions may be tempted to adopt this appendix along with its inherent bias against electric equipment, undercutting the emissions and health benefits of this code. We'd like to encourage that definitions are included for key terms in the code, including mixed fuel building, all electric building, that clearly tie them to the defined term combustion equipment, and to ensure the definition of combustion equipment is inclusive of all hydrocarbon-derived fuels or blends. We appreciate and support SWEEP's recommended changes here. We also want to ask that electric provisions for heat pump water heaters are inclusive of enough space and airflow to accommodate the air intake needed for that equipment. We support the amendment proposed by SWEEP to ensure this. In residential, we see that the ERI path conveys an advantage for designs with electric space and water heating that cover 80% of load. Electric technology, especially in new construction and major remodel, is easily able to handle heating loads in our climate. It is much better for upfront costs, operating cost stability, equity, emissions reductions, and health if new buildings don't connect to gas in the first place. The RI bonus should be available only when the remaining 20% of load is also non-combustion. We also have a concern related to the much greater emissions of very large homes. While we appreciate the board's choice to incorporate the 2024 ICC's stronger requirements for these homes, we note the threshold of 3,500 above grade allows for homes under 7,000 square feet to escape these requirements. This threshold is simply too low since that volume is likely to be conditioned space, and 7,000 square feet is large by any measure and not applicable to arguments about housing attainability. New construction and major remodel is our best opportunity to design healthy buildings that will protect occupants to come for years and generations to come. And it is by far the most affordable point to transition the building stock to clean electricity. And this is attainable. We have been thrilled to see that 70% of rebuilds from the Marshall Fire were built to levels of performance that more closely resemble what would result from the proposed low energy and carbon code. Please help make this clean, healthy building standard practice by strengthening and finalizing this code. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we've got Catherine Goff and Eric Bansberg is on deck.
All right, Catherine, can you hear us?
Yes, good morning.
All right, go ahead. Thank you.
Hello, Energy Code Board members. I'm Catherine Goff. I'm a North Glen City Council member. North Glen is a proud member of Colorado Communities for Climate Action, a coalition of 43 government entities advocating for stronger state and federal climate policy. We're excited and pleased by all the work that this board has put into creating the proposed low energy and carbon code. Colorado Communities for Climate Action supported HB 23-1362, which established the Energy Code Board, who subsequently developed the Model Low Energy and Carbon Code. We appreciate that this proposed code minimizes overall carbon dioxide emissions associated with new and renovated homes and commercial buildings. It makes sense that cities and counties with building codes will have to adopt these codes when they update any other building code starting next year. We also appreciate that the draft low energy and carbon code retains local control in the exact timing of adoption and the ability of the building department to amend the code. That flexibility will help local jurisdictions comply. The code applies to new construction and major remodel, which is important to cities like North Glen when big building projects come up. North Glen is dedicated to sustainability and doing our part to help meet the state's energy goals. Our new city hall opened for business last fall and runs entirely on the electricity that is generated by solar panels. It will receive a core certification as a green building after a year of data collection. Not every building can be this green, but it's important to remove obstacles and encourage green construction. One of the great strengths of this code is the way it remedies a bias against electric equipment in the historic code. Crediting electric heat pumps will greatly improve efficiency over gas, and by changing the performance metric to a fuel-neutral site energy use, builders and owners can make decisions on the true energy use and impact of a system. We understand that the energy cost-based approach has been left as optional in appendices R, M, and CL in the draft, but we are concerned that this undermines the fuel-neutral electric preferred approach by providing an option that sounds like a good idea but does more harm than good. Energy cost-based approaches are inconsistent across cities and counties, utilities, rate plans, and fuel costs, making this a very misleading approach. These appendices also don't account for the cost savings of building electric from the start, a critical oversight in an approach that purports to reflect costs. We also worry that this approach could recreate a patchwork of requirements across jurisdictions. We recommend that the Energy Code Board remove these appendices from the code to preserve the key electric preferred strength of the code. Also, we encourage the Energy Code Board to include electric preferred provisions in all pathways. They appear to be missing from the residential code at section R408. There should be more credits required for mixed fuel homes or reducing the credits required for all electric homes in order to remedy the fuel bias. We really appreciate the Code Board's approach of requiring higher performance from large homes. However, when we saw that the 3,500 square foot threshold for this requirement actually meant 3,500 square feet above ground, this actually means that the home can be nearly double that for 2 floors, 7,000 square feet total, and that's a really large house, before any requirement is applied. Large houses contribute much more emissions than small attainable housing, and they should be held to higher reductions. We ask the Code Board to lower this threshold significantly. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Catherine. All right, we've got Eric Bansberg up next and Johnny Cocker on deck.
All right, Eric, can you hear us?
Yep, I got you.
All right, go ahead.
All right, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all. I work for JM Weston Homes, and as the chair of the Colorado Springs HBA Construction Codes Committee, kind of speak on the behalf of a number of builders. And we just want to ensure that the board continues to provide options to build efficient homes and keep that in the forefront of their minds. The codes established by the ICC are to be fuel energy source neutral, and seems that the debiasing would go against that, as it is penalizing gas appliances. The current appliance options can be had in high efficiency models, and it also helps keep indoor air quality high and use less fuel in those options. Also, there are hybrid options where, it may not be hardly used at all in the case of a heat pump that has a fuel source backup, and may be more cost effective than maybe using something where resistance heating is your backup. It's all about giving people options to get to a low carbon future with the best approach that also keeps costs low for homeowners and buyers. Yes, utility rates can vary, and by giving them options also allows them the future of choosing what to reinstall when appliances need replacement, and whatever serves their needs in the future as well. There's also the opportunity for new technologies to be developed And by having all of the infrastructure and everything in place, provides everybody the option to go with what's best for everybody at that time. And that's really all I have.
Thank you so much, Eric.
Thank you.
All right, we've got Johnny Cocker up and Josh Cooperman on deck.
All right, Johnny, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you so much. My name is Johnny Kutcher. I work at RMA, a nonprofit organization working towards a low carbon future. Just wanted to start off by thanking the Energy Code Board for this excellent draft. I know that you put a lot of work into getting here. I think that you're definitely following the intent of the law. And I've watched many of your meetings, so I know how much work has gone into all the decisions made in this model draft. In response to some commenters suggesting that Energy Code Board reject this draft code and instead move towards the model IECC code, just wanted to comment on the ICC model process. There were some inconsistencies during the final decisions made by the International Code Council on the 2024 IECC that should call to question on whether or not there's been some industry capture. After 90% of the consensus committee members voted in favor of the 2024 draft IECC and the appeals board rejected appeals made by industry, the International Code Council reversed and threw out many of the debiasing portions of the code that were in the original draft of the IECC. So I think that the Energy Code Board here is making smart decisions to include some of those amendments that would basically put back in some of the decisions that the consensus committee process had made. And I think that you're, kind of encouraging you to stay the course on field debiasing. There's some amendments that could be made that would make it even more effective. I think that, as said by previous speakers, 3,500 feet above grade is a huge house. I think it should also include the square footage if there is a basement as a part of that a part of that equation. The cost appendices are kind of a weakening amendment that can be considered an out for local jurisdictions. Cost is not a great metric to be measuring the effectiveness of the performance pathway because it doesn't account for first cost. It doesn't account for externalized costs such as social cost of carbon or health metrics that adding fossil fuel pollution to that community may be contributed, but it's not actually included in that analysis, and it doesn't account for the volatility of fuel prices, which change pretty frequently. Debiasing heating and water heating sources could save $2 billion in health impacts per year if we were to eliminate on-site fuel combustion from the building sector. So these are just some of the externalized costs that aren't actually being accounted for when trying to do these cost metrics. I wrote out a fairly technical comment that kind of recommended a bunch of like small changes on the ways in which the heating equipment and heat pump water heating equipment measures are accounted for in the commercial code. I'd suggest you all look at that. I think it kind of simplifies those code measures a little bit in order to help debias the heating efficiency. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Johnny.
All right, we've got Josh Cooperman up next, and Jan Rose is on deck.
All right, Josh, can you hear us?
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
Good afternoon, members of the Colorado Energy Code Board. I am Josh Cooperman, a member of Louisville's City Council, representing my city's first ward. I also serve as Louisville's representative to the Colorado Communities for Climate Action, a coalition of 43 towns, cities, and counties across our state, advocating for strong and effective policies to address climate change. Energy conservation codes for buildings rank amongst the strongest and most effective policies for addressing climate change. 4, greenhouse gas emissions from buildings, residential and commercial, constitute a very significant fraction of Colorado's emissions. Louisville supports legislation such as HB 23-1362 that established the Energy Code Board to address climate change by improving energy efficiency, increasing the use of cost-effective renewable energy, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions and dependence on fossil fuels. Moreover, Louisville supports the improvement of air quality, renewable energy production, and emission reductions through legislative, administrative, and regulatory actions, such as this board is taking. Along with its neighboring municipalities of Boulder and Lafayette, also members of CC4CA, Louisville has led adoption of strong and effective building energy codes. In particular, Louisville was the first municipality in Colorado to adopt the 2021 International Energy Conservation Code. As an engaged resident and former member of Louisville's Sustainability Advisory Board, I was heavily involved in these adoptions. Louisville also supports regional approaches to the implementation of energy-efficient building codes, like the Model Low Energy and Carbon Code. Louisville has participated in 2 successive cohorts of municipalities developing regional energy codes, and Louisville now participates in such an effort through the Denver Regional Council of Governments. For all of these reasons, Louisville strongly supports the Energy Code Board's efforts to date in developing the Model Low Energy and Carbon Code. Louisville is particularly supportive of the electric preferred provisions of the Model Low Energy and Carbon Code, which closely align with Louisville's own codes. On this point, I wish to make 2 suggestions. First, the electric preferred provisions of Section R40408 are currently inadequate. And second, the optional appendices RM and CL detailing an energy cost-based approach run counter to the code's electric preferred provisions. Energy conservation codes for buildings, especially those with electric preferred provisions, also contribute to improving air quality both inside and outdoors. 4, burning fossil fuels results in buildings creates both indoor and outdoor air pollution. Louisville supports actions that effectively address the Metro Denver region's violations of Clean Air Act standards. Adoption of the Model Low Energy and Carbon Code is one such action. Although Louisville's residential building codes do not currently require larger units to meet stricter energy efficiency standards, I strongly support this aspect of the Model Low Energy and Carbon Code, and I maintain that such provisions would align with Louisville's housing goals. That said, the current threshold of 3,500 square feet of above-ground development is much too high. I suggest a threshold of 3,500 square feet of total development. Thank you for all of your work on the Model Low Energy and Carbon Code, and thank you for listening to and considering my comments.
Thank you, Josh. All right, we've got Jan Rose next, and Kate Jennings is on deck.
All right, Jan, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
All right, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, members of the Energy Code Board. My name is Jan Rose. I am the legislative analyst for the Colorado Coalition for a Livable Climate, commonly known as the CCLC. I come before you today to ask for your continued support for the Low Energy and Carbon Code and to remove the energy cost appendices currently under consideration because they reintroduce some dirty fuel bias in the CCLC's opinion. And in regards to that bias, the CCLC has championed a bill that was introduced last week called House Bill 251161, Labeling of Gas-Fueled Stoves. And I want to make the Energy Board aware of The bill's content, which is to require a wholesaler or supplier of a gas-fueled stove, oven, or cooktop to affix an adhesive label that is removable by the purchaser. And the label will read, "This appliance should be ventilated to the exterior when in use." That is the sum total content of the bill. There are no required changes to the energy code. There are no mandates. There are no stipulations, only that the label be created by the manufacturer of the appliance, and that the wholesaler or distributor of it affix the label, and that the purchaser of the appliance be able to remove it. So thank you very much for your time. I'm happy to take questions, but it's a very straightforward bill. And again, it's House Bill 25-1161 if you want to look it up online. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. All right, Kate Jennings is up next, and Darlan Chung is on deck.
All right, Kate, can you hear us?
I sure can. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you. Go ahead.
Excellent. Thank you. Hello, my name is Kate Jennings. I'm an internal medicine physician, and I'm here on behalf of myself and my patients. As a physician, I strongly support the model low energy and carbon code being developed and considered by this committee. The current draft code offers significant benefits for Colorado residents and their health. As you may know, on any given day, Colorado has some of the worst air pollution in the United States. Worsened air quality directly results in hospitalizations for asthma and other lung disease. People struggle to breathe as the air worsens, and these people are often our most vulnerable: the elderly, the young, and the lower income. Therefore, I strongly support this code as it directly aims to reduce the health-harming carbon pollution in the built environment. In particular, I support the fixed EUI targets that provide a baseline or standard for energy efficiency across all building types. Number two, I also support the credits for the high-efficiency heating, water heating, and other high-efficiency electrical appliances. This is especially important as it aims to improve the availability of these electrical appliances and directly improving the air quality in the houses of our most vulnerable with lung disease. On-site combustion of fuels in buildings costs Colorado about $2 billion in healthcare impacts per year and is responsible for 180 early deaths. Sadly, this harm disproportionately impacts the elderly and community of color, as they are often exposed to 17% more particulate matter from residential gas appliance. The draft code's credit for efficient electric equipment helps address these inequitable health impacts. Finally, I also support the demand response requirements. These are innovative ideas that encourage a more flexible and resilient grid that decreases peak demand. These requirements create a more efficient system with less daily spikes in air pollution. The efficiency improves the air quality, not just for people in their homes, but for residents across the state. Like many here, I do respectfully recommend removing appendices CL and RM. These appendices seem to favor cheaper and dirtier fuels through cost-based performance compliance. These appendices do not account for the environmental and health costs of these dirtier fuels. These costs are often borne by patients by rising healthcare and insurance premiums when their chronic conditions are worsened by air pollution. By removing appendices CL and RM, I think Colorado can really continue its commitment to cutting carbon emissions, improving air quality, and ultimately demonstrating our care for the health of all of our citizens. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kate. We have Darlan Chung up next and Sarah Tressiter on deck.
All right, Darlan, can you hear us?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Great. I'm Darlan Chang, an Arvada resident who has devoted the last 6 years to breaking my personal addiction to fossil fuels and helping others do the same. I'm here to advocate for removing appendices CL and RM from the model code because I see them as providing easy excuses for backsliding from the urgent need to kick the fossil fuel habit. I have a lot of experience with fossil fuel addiction because after getting my PhD in mechanical engineering in 2003, I worked for 16 years as a research engineer at ExxonMobil Upstream Research Company. I started with the hope of helping ExxonMobil and the world transition to clean energy over the course of my career, but I became disillusioned that all my research projects on transition were thwarted by management, and only my research projects on increasing the world's addiction to fossil fuels were embraced by ExxonMobil. My daughter was born a couple of months before Hurricane Ike hit Houston and knocked out power for millions of people, including my family, over 4 days. And she was 9 years old when Hurricane Harvey flooded homes to waist level less than 2 miles away from my family's home. It took tremendous effort and sacrifice for my family just to break our own personal dependence on fossil fuels. We were willing to leave the Houston area and look for decarbonized neighborhoods throughout the U.S., and we found the GEOS zero-emission all-electric neighborhood in Arvada. I left ExxonMobil and moved to our present decarbonized home in 2019, have 2 electric vehicles in the garage, and have not had any use for fossil gas or a gas station in my family's daily life since. The GEOS neighborhood has 28 all-electric homes that each generate as much electricity from its rooftop solar panels as a home uses over the course of a year, which is truly net zero since they do not depend on fossil gas. It was originally planned to have about 280 all-electric homes in GEOS, but instead there was backsliding after the original developer was forced to sell to a new developer, and the homes built since the first 28 are dependent on fossil gas, even though they're marketed as net zero if you don't count the burning of fossil gas. Based on personal experience at GEOS, I believe that the lack of codes that are firmly focused on decarbonization played a role in the backsliding. Since breaking my family's personal addiction to fossil fuels, I've been working over the past 6 years to break my career's dependence on fossil fuels. I'm one of the few former ExxonMobil research engineers who have transitioned their career to decarbonization, as I'm now the president of GeoSolar Technologies, a startup company focused on decarbonizing existing homes and neighborhoods based on how the first 28 homes of the GEOS neighborhood were built decarbonized. Other fossil fuel workers are decarbonizing their careers, like HVAC contractors in Colorado who only installed fossil gas furnaces before now venturing into heat pump installation. But just as I saw backsliding with the GEOS neighborhood, I see the danger of backsliding for transitioning fossil fuel workers to clean energy work, as long as codes are riddled with easy excuses for continuing dependence on fossil fuels. Please remove the easy excuses by removing appendices CL and RM from the model code. Thanks for your attention.
All right, thank you, Darlon. We've got Sarah Tressiter next and Tracy Burnett on deck.
All right, Sarah, can you hear us?
Yes. Hi, can you all hear me?
We can, thank you.
Cool. Thank you all for taking the time to hear us all chat with you about the Model Low Energy and Carbon Code draft. As said, my name is Sarah Tressiter. I am the Senior Climate and Energy Organizer for the Colorado chapter of the Sierra Club. As many of my friends and partners have already talked about, there are so many parts of the currently drafted energy code that the Sierra Club supports related to efficiency and electrification. We also appreciate that the code focuses on affordability and offers flexible pathways for all electric and mixed fuel buildings. But my support is not totally what I want to talk about. I actually would like to focus, as many others have, on urging you to remove the CL and RM appendices that are related to energy costs as an alternative pathway to compliance. So these appendices kind of rely on the assumption that gas prices will remain relatively predictable and stable, which, as we are all aware, is a flawed assumption. Gas prices are volatile in nature and will only continue to fluctuate due to geopolitical events, zero carbon policies, and just other global market trends. Relying on energy cost as a compliance metric is unreliable and just does not reflect real world conditions here in Colorado and around the nation and world. Additionally, these cost-based compliance pathways contradict with our state's emissions reduction goals by basically incentivizing a continued reliance on high carbon infrastructure. The using cost also fails to account for all of the other related external costs for burning gas in buildings. Others have already mentioned the health impacts and related costs. I'll emphasize them again. $2 billion per year in health costs and 180 early deaths annually are attributed to on-site gas combustion in Colorado. I also want to highlight that a study last year by the American Council for Energy Efficient Economy highlighted that American households can save up to $96 billion through residential and home electrification, but only if low-income and DIC communities are electrified alongside higher-income ones. These appendices leave many disproportionately impacted communities vulnerable to continued reliance on fossil gas, which will hurt their health and their pocketbooks. Finally, I want to just highlight one other recommendation that's also been brought up by previous commenters. We strongly support the energy efficiency and renewable energy requirements for larger homes, but believe that they can and should be strengthened to ensure true net zero energy. A home with more than 35 square foot, oh goodness gracious, my dogs are barking, sorry. I'll just finish up because they're going to be crazy now, but they also support the model energy code.
All right, thank you, Sarah, and your dogs. We'll move on to Tracy Burnett, and Christine Brinker is on deck.
All right, Tracy, can you hear us?
Yeah, hi. First of all, how are you all holding up under all this testimony? I'm Tracy Burnett, former Colorado State Representative, and I'm representing myself as a private citizen today. I live in Boulder County. I was the prime sponsor of House Bill 1362, meaning that I was a legislator who initiated the bill and worked the most on getting it passed into law, and which created the Energy Code Board that you now sit on. So first of all, I want to thank all of you for all the hard work that you have been doing these last few years. I periodically have checked in with several organizations who've been following your work, and overall the reactions have been very positive. And by that, I mean that you have in general stayed true to the intent and spirit of the law. And I want to thank you for that. The short title of my bill, 1362, is Building Greenhouse Gas Emissions, which makes it undeniably clear that the intent of the legislation was to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in buildings. In addition to creating those three codes, it allocated $22 million for grants to foster building electrification. So I'm delighted to hear that you are including fixed EUI targets to ensure all buildings, regardless of fuel type, are measured against the same standard, that you have high efficiency heating and water heating credits. And this is personally important to me since my son nearly died of an asthma attack when he was a toddler. I'm particularly delighted that you'll incorporate demand response requirements or credits, as I think this is one area that Colorado is falling short on. And with this work that you're doing, it has a potential, especially in light of new technologies like virtual power plants, of making significant progress in making our grid more reliable, resilient, and efficient. And I also support the higher efficiency thresholds for larger homes. However, I strongly urge you to remove the energy cost appendices CL and RM, as they are biased toward buildings using fossil fuels, because they don't adequately account for the full cost to society of burning fossil fuels, and therefore do not follow the spirit and intent of the law. When I was in office, Colorado passed a number of bills citing the social cost of carbon. In fact, one of my very first bills that I passed, the gas demand side management, enacted into law for the first time the social cost of methane, i.e. natural gas, and required the Public Utilities Commission to use it when calculating cost-benefit analyses. And at the time, the EPA calculated the social cost of methane as $1,756 per ton. And while much attention has put on reducing carbon dioxide emissions, reducing methane emissions has a much greater immediate impact on addressing our climate crisis because of its greater global warming potential. But here's something I really want to focus in on. Some testifiers today have talked about the cost to homeowners. And according to RMI, children who live in homes with gas appliances have a 42% increased risk of developing asthma. And let me just remind you of my son's nearly fatal asthma attack. He was in the hospital for 8 days, followed by months of me administering multiple asthma medications every few hours. That cost tens of thousands of dollars. And thankfully, we had good health insurance, but that's not like many low-income folk here in Colorado. So please take this into account. There is truly a social cost of methane. These appendices also do not account for the additional upfront cost savings of building an all-electric building compared to a mixed fuel building, such as eliminating the need to run gas lines throughout the building and from the building to the street. So in summary, I support fixed EUI targets, heating and water heating credits, demand response tied requirements, and higher thresholds for larger homes. But please level the playing field and account for the true upfront and lifetime cost savings and benefits of all electric buildings by removing appendices CL and RM. Thanks so much for your time. Keep up the great work and have a great day.
All right, thank you, Tracy. And I just wanted to flag that the rest of Sarah's comments are in the Q&A. And last but not least of our scheduled speakers, we have Christine Brinker.
Hello, Christine, can you hear us?
Yes, thank you. My name is Christine Brinker with Southwest Energy Efficiency Project. I'm the Senior Buildings Policy Manager there. And thank you for rearranging and letting me go last. I had a child issue that came up right when it was almost my turn, and I was starting to get worried about that. It's all okay now. But moving on, I, similarly to a lot of the last speakers, I want to express my strong support and agreement for the direction that you guys have been headed with this draft. I've really appreciated all of your very thoughtful and very thorough discussions. And in fact, I hope that many of these items can be incorporated into the next model code in the 2027 round. So thank you again for your dedication to this process. In the bigger picture, I think you've struck the right balance between emissions reductions and first costs. I want to emphasize that housing affordability isn't determined by the energy code. It's determined by factors like land costs, location, school quality, walkability, neighborhood character, amenities, size, etc. And energy codes there are just a drop in the bucket. In fact, with the number of McMansions that I see going up across the state, it's clear that housing attainability for new home buyers isn't the top consideration of most builders. I know that there's a lot of factors that go into that, like zoning codes, etc. But I do want to appreciate the Energy Code Board for recognizing this and setting the large home threshold a little bit lower at 3,500 square feet above grade plane. I want to point out that that doesn't mean a 3,500 square foot home. That can mean a 7,000 square foot home when you consider the space below grade plane. And on that note, I think it's worth revisiting the requirements for the extra large homes and seeing if you could discuss requiring them to be net zero, true net zero. When you consider their huge heating and cooling and water heating loads for that size of house, not to mention amenities like spas and home theaters, etc. Their energy use and carbon emissions are huge. So I think it would be fair if they shoulder a little more of the reductions there. Going back to my bigger point, in other words, housing affordability isn't the same as first cost, and housing affordability isn't the same as builder profitability. I encourage you to keep on the path that you're on. You're closely following what was asked of you in statute, like former Representative Burnett just said, and I think frankly you're doing a good job at it. With my remaining time, I know I'll get cut off partway through this, but I wanted to mention a few specific technical things in the draft. So switching gears a little bit, in the ERI path, I appreciated how you made an electric preferred differential there. I think you could make that differential 5 points instead of 5%. That would make it simpler and less prone to confusion, as well as reducing the math involved, a discussion you guys have had on other occasions. And second, the option for a higher ERI for electric space heating, I think that should be fully all electric space heating, not just 80% electric space heating, because as written, you could still have 20% of your heating load with gas. And since we're talking about new homes here, there's really no need to not put in a cold climate heat pump with a little bit of electric resistance backup. So maybe you could reconsider that 80% number there in the ERI path. In R408, I noticed that you seem to be missing an electric preferred differential there, whereas you have one in the other path. So I wonder if this might have been an oversight, and if you might take another look at that to make it more comparable with the other pathways. That could mean either requiring more credits for mixed fuel or requiring less credits for all electric homes, or both. Two of my other favorite topics, windows and then appliances. I liked that you were giving extra credit in R408 for more efficient windows. I think another way to consider doing that instead of reductions of 0.05 U factor would be to simply offer two tiers. One would be as written in the base code, and the other would be meeting Energy Star specification for Windows version 7, which as current law stands is set to be the default for residential Windows sales statewide. So that would be a good way to pilot that and help bring builders up to speed to using that Energy Star standard. And then similarly, the base code offers additional efficiency credit for more efficient appliances, again in R408. You might look at linking that to Energy Star instead of federal law, because Energy Star can be a little bit more nuanced and nimble. It's pretty hard to change federal law, and there's a lot of additional players and stakeholders there with different vested interests than Energy Star. So perhaps you could take a look at that. I know Energy Star isn't typically referenced in code, but it is referenced frequently in local code adoption. So I think it would be a good fit. Two more things if I have time. For water
You are
heaters,
just at your 5 minutes. I apologize. And I know we have a little bit of extra time, 10, 15 minutes. So Adam, I don't know if you wanted to open it back up to folks.
Yeah, I think since we have time, we can certainly open it up to any folks who have additional comments. Folks are able to raise your hand in the chat. And I will note, Marty, your hand has been raised throughout, so I don't know if you were intending to continue to have your hand raised, but Christine, since I know you had additional comments, we could give you a couple more minutes to finish your comments, and then it looks like Marty might have some additional comments as well.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Go ahead.
Okay. Yes, two other short comments on water heaters. The electric ready provisions for water heaters on the residential side seem to be missing the physical space and airflow. Heat pump water heaters compared to regular tank water heaters, they need a tiny bit more height, just by a few inches, but more importantly, they need a source of air so that they can pull heat from that air to put into the hot water. And that can be a louver door, it can be a grill, it can be a jump duct, or it can just be a bigger mechanical room. But I think that that's an important consideration. Otherwise, your efforts for electric ready for residential water heaters are all for naught if you can't actually put it in the room when you get to that point. And another thing to consider that's out of the box regarding water heaters. Water heaters typically come on the residential side with a default setting of 140 degrees, but Department of Energy recommends 120 degrees as the sweet spot between saving energy on the one hand, but being hot enough to kill all the bacteria and Legionella on the other hand. So one zero cost requirement you could put in is to change the default setting on water heaters when they're installed to 120 degrees instead of 140. Homeowners could obviously move that as they wanted, but at least it would be set at that level to start with. That is it. Thank you for the chance to give those last couple comments.
Thanks, Christine. All right, Marty, you're next. And then I see a Caleb Sulzin in the queue. And
Yeah, Marty, go ahead and we'll give you up to 5 more minutes and then we'll go to Caleb.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to add a point of clarification on my comment around charging times and parking dwell times. I think it's crucial for the board to understand when considering the EV requirements that the paradigm really does shift when you become an EV driver. When we drive gas vehicles, the common practice is to fill up your tank and then drive it down to near empty before you visit a gas station again. Has been well established that EV drivers adopt a different habit as soon as they switch to EVs, where you're taking a more opportunistic approach to charging. That is, you're constantly topping off your vehicle whenever you can to get an additional, say, 20, 30, 40, 50 miles of charging in those opportunities where you're already parked in that space. And so this is why the level 1 can provide such utility, is because drivers have the opportunity to top off their vehicle comparable to the amount of average daily driving amounts. They can just do that every night when they're plugged in. And again, I very much appreciate and support the flexibility of those substitutions where developers can have the choice to add a larger number of level 1 chargers for a lower cost, even though that charging won't fill a whole battery. The point is drivers get to top off every single night when they go home, and this has become very well established practice by EV drivers. I would also just echo the point to my point around dwell times in business settings. This is the flip side scenario where even if you have a level 2 charger installed, if you're going to be at a site for, only 20 or 30 minutes as a customer, the hassle of going and plugging and charging in and beeping your card and doing everything you need to do just to get an additional, 7 or 10 miles of range, I just question whether or not customers are going to be making use of that. And so if we overbuild infrastructure and add to the development costs when those just simply aren't going to be used by customers, then I feel like, again, that can lead to some criticism and cynicism of the goals of this code. But I would lastly like to highlight the importance of providing adequate EV infrastructure in all commercial buildings for employees specifically. Daytime charging and workplace charging for employees, whether that's level 1 or level 2, is crucial for EV adoption. And daytime charging is better for our grid. It aligns better with solar production as contrast to nighttime charging. And it can also be an important equity consideration for employees that may not have access to charging at home, but then can get access to charging throughout the day while they're at work at their place of work. So again, when we're thinking in a commercial setting and commercial setting for EV charging requirements, I would encourage the board to look at how the code maximizes the support for employee charging at most. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Marty. And we have Caleb.
All right, Caleb, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you. Go ahead.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. I come from, I'm representing Building Code Guru. I'm the owner and founder, and I also have the unique position of representing both the Colorado chapter of ICC with code officials, as well as the Northern Colorado Home Builders Association. So kind of representing both sides of the industry from a regulatory and construction standpoint. And just a couple points that I wanted to bring up. One of integrating with other codes. I know this was kind of brought out, but there are a number of items that were written into the amendments on this that reference a specific square footage requirement rather than the square footage plus greater than or less than, which would, from a enforcement standpoint, mean that if that structure hit the exact square footage, the requirement would be enforceable. But if it was even 1 square foot greater than or less than, it would not be enforceable. So just from an enforceability standpoint, going through, making sure that those points are cleaned up. Just to clarify, whether it's that target and greater or that target and less than, as well as some, making sure that there aren't other conflicts with requirements in other portions of codes and regulations. The other point I wanted to bring up is the charging language for the code board of not increasing the stringency of any requirement of the International Energy Conservation Code, including the appendices that it adopts as part of the Model Low Energy and Carbon Code language. And that's in House Bill 22-1362, Section 7. And with that mandate, removing requirements, I know there's been a lot of testimony today on both sides of appendices CL and RM, both removing it from the appendices back to the body of the code as it originally was in the IECC, or eliminating those appendices altogether. In interest of following the charging language for the board, that would go back to the body of the code in order to not increase the stringency of it. Making this flexible and including options for enforcement is really the target that was behind the generation of the 2024 IECC, and being able to maintain that by providing options and flexibility in the enforcement and also the construction in compliance with the code from both sides is equally important. And so I would just point back to that as kind of a summary statement. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Caleb. Adam, do we have time for one more, you think?
Yeah, I think we can squeeze in Johnny, and then I think that will be our last comment. And then we'll go to wrap up comments from the team.
Perfect.
All right, Johnny, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Just want to respond to that last comment. I think that the Energy Code Board, based on the most recent law, has the ability to relax any code appendices or resources, and those resources include an all-electric requirement for both the Commercial Energy Code Board. There's the resource, I think it's CRA and RRA. So by relaxing those resources to become site UI based requirements, you are still in full compliance with the law. Just wanted to flag that, since that last comment kind of suggests that a site UI based code might be an increase in stringency. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Johnny. And I believe that concludes our spoken public comment, and we'll start the wrap up.
I want to thank all of the public commenters who spent the time to be here with us today. And I know I will speak on behalf of the board, which I generally try not to do, but I know that all of our board members genuinely appreciate you providing these comments to us. And I know that there will be a lot of good thought and effort put into trying to address as many of these comments as we possibly can. So thank you all.
Awesome. So speaking of addressing all of your public comments, our next meeting is going to be February 27th, 9 to 12. And the main topic of conversation is to review and discuss those draft number 1 proposals. Just a flag that the meeting minutes from today will be sent ahead of time, ahead of that meeting, and we'll approve them there. Just a reminder that if you are interested in submitting proposals for amendments to this draft, please do so by February 18th. That is a pretty firm deadline because it is on our team and Adam and the CEO to compile all of those proposals and turn them around in just a couple days. So all the proposals need to be formatted as proposals plus rationale statements, or if there's an issue that you wanted to discuss with the board, you may submit those as well. But please just be as specific as possible so we can be pretty efficient. We just note that we don't want to be discussing very broad 10,000-foot level ideas anymore. And just to note that the next 3 meetings, including this following one, will be focused on reviewing and straw polling those proposals to develop the next draft. Yeah, Adam.
I just wanted to, I think, kind of emphasize something that Allie was talking about. So, you know, as she said, pretty much all proposals need to be very detailed, specific code language proposals, or, you know, she mentioned the opportunity to still bring up topics for discussion by the board. I just wanted to put some extra, you know, comments on those in particular. I think what we're looking for in those types of topics are ones where you may not necessarily know how you feel that you want to potentially address an issue, but you don't necessarily know exactly how to do it, or you would like feedback from your fellow board members on how to address that issue. And, you know, certainly as specific as you can be with what those comments are and what kind of area you're looking to get feedback from your fellow board members is certainly appreciated. I will also note that we will only really be discussing those at the February 27th meeting, because that will still allow time to develop concrete proposals based on those discussions and have them in time for our next meetings following that. So I think the short of it is, please try to be as specific with your proposals as possible. If you can tie it to code language and provide that rationale as much as you possibly can with your proposals, please do that. That makes it easier for your fellow board members to assess your proposal. It makes it easier for us to move forward and not have to, you know, figure out code language live, as you know, I think Tim and others have said in previous meetings, is not a good process anyway, to try to develop code language in a live setting. So the more we can have those well thought out and provide good rationales for those proposals, your project management team would very much appreciate that. And I know your fellow board members would as well.
Thanks, Adam. Appreciate that. Any questions about that before we move on? All right. Yeah, Caroline, sorry about that.
Yeah, not a question about that, but while we still have some of our speakers from the public hearing here, just an invitation. We certainly heard a lot of comments around the demarcation in home size of the 3,500 square feet, both expressions of concern as well, that it's too high and others that it's too low. And so, I think this is the opportunity, if anybody has good technical resources that they can point us to. Again, the reminder is the intent there is that the base code should capture the majority of homes and things that are consistent in terms of energy use. And as a code board, we were trying to identify the point where we trip a threshold where we need to establish more stringent requirements. So if anybody has any resources that could be helpful for us in revisiting that topic that they can submit before that next meeting through the public comment, I think we'd certainly welcome that. We again are looking for data-driven resources to appropriately pick that threshold. And I know that was something we struggled with, and so certainly invite any of our learned speakers from today to share information specifically on that topic.
Thanks, Carolyn. And I will just note too, the public comment form for draft number 1 is closed now. We're not accepting any further comments through that, but there, just to remind everyone who might have resources you want to share, we have our rolling public comment form that is under the Energy Code Board section of CEO's website. So please submit anything if you have anything through that form. Thank you all.
Awesome. And on that topic, we are sprinting full steam ahead towards that Monday, April 7th, draft number 2. And there will be another public comment period similar to this one, from the 7th through May 2nd. But there will not be another chance for live public comment. So in this sort of spoken format. And then before y'all know it, September 1st will be here and we'll have that final code completed. So we'll definitely be here very soon. And yeah, we look forward to the next round of reviewing public comments. Any questions about that timeline? If not, I'll echo Adam. Thank you so much for being here, and for the members of the public who shared their comments. And yeah, we're very grateful for your time, and we certainly look forward to the amendments to draft number 1 from all the board members.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.